Hi everyone, welcome back to my garden here in Portland, Oregon. In this video you're going to get my take on creating a gravel garden path, planting garlic and bulbs in containers, and a review of plants that I mail ordered from Costco. This fall I've been laying the foundations for this new, or rather restarted garden here at my home. I faced challenges, joys, and I learned many lessons as I worked to rebuild this space. So let's dive in. Well, a couple months ago I was pleasantly surprised by a volunteer pumpkin that popped up in the garden. October 20th. Yep, it's mostly orange. Kind of got there. I don't know if these little green spots will go away and it'll get all the way there before Halloween now, this coming week, but yeah, not too bad. I'll harvest it this coming week. It's always a joy when nature takes over and surprises you with something unexpected. By early November, it was ready for harvest, and it's one of those small delights that just makes gardening very rewarding. Well, I'll confess, the big one was from a local pumpkin patch, a great farm out on the west side, Hoffman Farms. But I'm pretty proud of the next largest one, which grew from a volunteer, and it made it, and then a couple little small ones, which got some warts on them, just perfect for Halloween. The author George R.R. Martin describes writing approaches as being like an architect or like a gardener. And that really stuck with me because sometimes I envision gardening as if I was an architect. After listening to his comparison, I realized that my gardening was more of a process of constant revision than a well-planned and executed out blueprint. This fall's gardening started with a decision about pathways. I'd initially gotten a load of 1/4 inch minus gravel, a fine, almost dust-like gravel that I actually started to love once it settled into the paths. Later I tried 3/4 inch crushed rock, which is what I initially planned, but I found it just wasn't the look I wanted. That's gardening for you, a bit of trial and error. I decided to keep it as a base layer and then put the finer gravel on top to create the look and feel that I'm enjoying. Sometimes it's just about working with what you have and adapting along the way. You know, there's something so peaceful about sitting here, sitting back, just taking in the garden amid all the construction and the planning. I try to make sure that I take a moment. I hope you all do that too, sitting, breathing, admiring the apple and fig trees. I even admire the mint that has escaped and gone wild. It gives me some joy. If we never stop to appreciate what we've done, we miss a big part of the reward here. I decided to put in a small retaining wall along the west side to create more planting space for next year. Just a couple of feet high, but it stretches about 80 feet long. It's been slow work, shoveling gravel, lifting blocks. It's hard and tedious, especially that first layer when you try to get it level. But sometimes you got to redo things just to get it right. It's a reminder to me that gardening is a mix of patience, endurance, and a bit of perfectionism sometimes, even though that's not as easy for me. This process really resonates with me because it's similar to building a solid foundation in life or business. Sometimes you have to start over, make adjustments, and ensure the first layer is the best you can do, even if it's challenging. Just like in gardening, in life and business, the foundation determines the strength of everything you build on top of it. The trick for me is not obsessing about everything in the same way. It takes judgment to focus on those things that are actually foundational. Remember, most of the rest of it can be revised and improved on over time. And that's the path of the gardener. My extra inventory of blocks stacked on the fence along the driveway here. November 2nd, and I still have some decorative alliums and some garlic to plant, and then I'll be done with planting my bulbs for this fall planting, which will be the spring season. Garlic will actually, it'll come up, but then it would be harvested like in July. So I've pulled apart the garlic into individual cloves. It's these individual cloves that I'm planting. This would be kind of the rooting end here, and this would be the sprouting end that's going to shoot up a stalk. This variety here is Transylvania softneck garlic, so it's going to produce a stalk that is kind of more wavy. It's not the hard stalk, it won't have scapes the way the hardneck garlic will. I do have some hardneck garlic music also planted, so that we'll have both this coming year for the fun in the garden. I don't know if I've got enough room for this much garlic. We'll see as we go here. Recently, I made a trip back to my old garden to grab some more pots to use here. I still have some softneck garlic and decorative allium bulbs to plant, and these pots are perfect for the job. The pots I brought back include this nice heavy ceramic one at the top and a few resin pots I originally got from Costco. The resin pots are weathered, some of the paint is chipping, but they're still great containers. In fact, I kind of like the weathered look on these. What do you think? These pots are ideal for garlic and decorative bulbs. They provide plenty of depth for the roots. I've placed them along the east side beds, which are still a work in progress, but this will be a good start for now. I'm going to start by planting my decorative alliums up there. This bag here. We'll see how many I have left over after stuffing as many as I can into there. If I have some left over, then I might find other places to put them. But I think this row here, I think that's my soft neck garlic row, and then this tub is my hard neck garlic. So yeah, we'll see. I've never grown garlic in pots like this, so we'll see how it goes. As the temperatures dropped, I shifted to planting bulbs with a mix of tulips, daffodils, crocuses, and more. I've layered these in pots with potting mix I picked up earlier. The bulbs were arranged so that the earliest bloomers are at the top, extending the flowering season and creating a beautiful display coming spring. Here you can see the clay pots and a stock tub ready to be filled with soil, each prepared for planting. I began by filling each pot with a fresh layer of soil, scooping it in carefully to ensure a good base for the bulbs. Next, I prepared the soil by loosening it up and making sure it was evenly distributed around the pot. Here in these pots, I started with hyacinths. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but hyacinths, planting them slightly deeper since they bloom a little later in the spring. I also planted some more ornamental alliums, which will bring more height and texture to this display. Finally, I gave the pots a thorough watering to help the bulbs settle in. Keeping the soil evenly moist throughout the winter will ensure that my bulbs stay healthy. A few more pots there on the east side set out, ready to put bulbs in. This is the thing. These are the moments that make me look forward to next season. Seeing these pots come alive with blooms is going to be a highlight of the spring. One of the major projects this fall was installing a rusted metal edging along the fence to define the garden bed and protect that fence from soil and moisture. It's a practical way that helps me separate the fence from the beds, and it gives the garden a bit of rustic charm, I think. Well, it's morning here in the driveway garden. It's not a very illustrious name for the garden, but I haven't come up with anything more poetic, and it is very descriptive. It's coming sunrise here in this area now about 7:40, and it's about 8 o'clock now, 8 a.m. I get up usually these days between 5:30 and 6 because I take the nighttime bedtime duty with the baby. So I put our baby girl to bed, and then I just go to bed, and then my wife takes the morning get her up duty, and that gives me this morning time to play in the garden for a little bit before I start the day. It's a weekend right now, but I can do that usually even on the weekdays before I start getting into office work. The edging roll is heavy, and it takes some careful measuring to make sure everything lines up right. Once I had the edging laid out, I cut it to size, and I started placing it along the back of the fence. It's a slow process, but the result, I think, is worth it. Got some clean lines, some well-defined garden space. I like it. I think this rusted edging has a beautiful patina that contrasts nicely with the greenery. It's the little details that I'm working on trying to perfect in my gardening this year. Working in a smaller garden, for me, it's now all about the details. Recently, I finished filling the bed along this west border with garden mulch, a total of 3.5 yards of what's called Nutrimix compost from Grimm's. It was a lot of work, but I think it looks fantastic. Well, this Nutrimix, this stuff, it doesn't smell like manure, which is good because this is a residential area, but it is smoking. I'm thinking that since this is early November and I'm putting this down now, by April, it should be ready for planting. Hopefully it won't be too hot. I did find a slug kind of swimming around in it, enjoying itself, so maybe that's a sign that this isn't too hot. But we're going to find out, I guess. In this process, I discovered my pickup can carry a full yard of compost, which saves me trips compared to the half-yard loads that I was hauling for gravel. But while the truck can handle a full yard, I learned my limits the hard way. Unloading 1 yard of compost proved exhausting. I managed to unload half the truck before realizing I was too tired to continue. So, it looks like I'll stick to unloading half-yard loads of compost from now on. I'm really liking what I did here, if I do say so myself. I have an old wine barrel with this sky pencil on top of it in a pot, and yeah, I think this looks great next to this fig tree. By the way, these figs have been fantastic. They were still producing into the first 2 weeks of October. Of course, this year, in the first week of October, it did hit 80 degrees. In early October, I was getting these plants, different kinds of bushes really, potted up. I'm putting them in pots because I'm not exactly sure where I want to have them permanently. This garden is still in a phase of landscaping, putting in terraces and things like that. These are plants that I got from Costco. So far, so good. I'm pretty happy with them. This is the wax leaf privet. Although these are ordered from Costco, the vendor is called Alder and Oak. Similarly, some of the other bushes are coming from a place called Perfect Plants. I think these Costco plants are looking good. They actually ship in from Florida, and I regret that because, well, some of these, like berries, I'm sure can be propagated or are propagated somewhere here in Oregon. But honestly, the price was good, and it's super convenient to just have it shipped to my house. I do often buy local, so I'm not going to beat myself up too much about this. After I received the berries, I was also pleasantly surprised to realize they actually ship 3 different kinds of varieties of both the blackberries and the blueberries. So here's the full lineup, starting with these magnolias. They look a little bit ragged and they've got some black spots on the leaves, but I think that'll go away. Hopefully that'll clear up once I get them properly planted. As we go down here, we've got some tea olives, which are neither tea nor olives. They're a bush that is supposed to produce a fragrant white flower. At least that's my understanding. I got a couple of sky pencil plants, which I think are going to be very architecturally interesting, and the star jasmine, which I've grown at the other garden, and it is beautifully fragrant. Then some giant thuja, that's the big tall evergreens, and I'm going to plant those in strategic places to help block the city view or the view of the neighbor's house. There's some sunshine ligustrum and the wax privet, and then we get into the berry bushes. I also have 2 limelight hydrangea. I think all this is going to create some great backbone to the garden, and then I'll plant lots of annuals around it. Well, once I got the plants in the pots, they were sitting on the driveway, and, well, I realized that I needed to move them. And I tried using a dolly, but I couldn't get it to lean back. The pots are heavy, and let's be honest, I'm not getting any younger here. I debated whether to empty the pots and move the plants and then repot them in place. It's kind of a puzzle. You know, sometimes the solution isn't clear, and you have to experiment a bit. I have a bad habit of trying to force things. That is, rather than discovering the right tool or method, I just brute force it to get it done, and that's trying to backfire on me with injuries and soreness. So I'm working on having patience and being more diligent about trying to discover the right tool or process that gives me a more elegant solution to a problem. On moving these pots, I haven't found it. If you have any suggestions, please put them in the comments. I ultimately just transplanted the bushes into empty pots that were already placed where I wanted them. That's going to set back the plants a little bit by disturbing the roots, but I think I can afford the setback more than an injured back. Another thing the garden teaches me is about choices. My gardening choices in this smaller space reminds me of the advice from Michael Porter, the business strategist. Strategy is deciding what not to do. It rings true in gardening too. Rather than tackling everything at once, I've decided to focus on the west side beds for now. The east side, that can just wait till next year. It's easy to want to do it all, but gardening also teaches us about balance and patience, knowing when to say, not yet, and allowing yourself to enjoy what you've accomplished. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Gardening, as always, is a work in progress. A mix of plans, patience, pauses, time to appreciate. I hope you found inspiration here to work on your own projects. And remember, to take a moment and enjoy what you've done. Until next time, let's all have fun gardening.